Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Particle Accelerator podcast, where we talk to future thinking business leaders about how to grow their business and accelerate their team. I am here with Jared. Jared, would you please introduce yourself?
Sure. Hey, Jared Barol, RevOps and go-to-market strategy leader. Big companies such as Salesforce, and then small companies such as Reputation and others. And happy to be here. Thank you very much for having me, Ben.
No, my pleasure. And what is the role you usually play? What do you usually do for folks?
I usually work with the revenue leaders, so sales, marketing, customer success, to build a strategy. First, what does that mean? So it's where to play, how to win. And it's what market segments, what industries, and then how do we structure organizations around that? How do we do that while fitting into a budget? And then what's the outcome money the board should expect from the activities that we're doing? And so I'll run that full process. And part of that is, tech and technology and integrations. Part of that is heavy data, heavy analytics, and a lot of it's sales strategy and marketing strategy.
Oh, cool. I totally understand. Like a go-to-market plus kind of a
Go-to-market
guy.
plus. Yeah, I like that.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, I would love to get to know you a little better. And the way that I do that is I love asking this question. What was your first job? Like for me, it was a paper route. Like how'd you as a human being on planet Earth make your first dollar?
I was selling Cutco knives door to door.
Cutco knives.
Do you know Cutco?
I haven't heard of that particular uh like door to door style or
Door to door. It was and I was in high school, and I don't know how I got roped into this, but it's a kitchenware company, and it's an MLM for the most part. But I would they went through a couple days of training on how to sell and the objection handling, and then they let us loose in the world with a bag of knives, a bunch of 16, 17, 18 year olds, and spending Saturday afternoons in like random people's kitchens, cutting pennies with their special shears.
oh, that's
Uh,
cool.
yeah.
That's cool. Well, to continue with that, what toy or hobby did you have as a child that inspired what you do career-wise today?
I love. So I remember saying to my dad when I was really young that I want to get paid to travel the world and meet people.
Hmm.
And so I don't know if this is a hobby so much, but that was what I wanted. I was single digits age. I don't remember how old exactly. Uh, and that drove most of the decisions I made for the next decade. And so I started my career after college, moving to Eastern Europe for a few years, and then to Central Europe, the Middle East, and spent time building sales organizations, getting paid to travel the world and meet people. That drove most of the decision processes that I had up until probably the point shortly after I got married and definitely after I had a child.
Yeah, cool. Well, what was your favorite and least favorite course in school?
Least favorite was physics.
Okay.
That's an easy one. Yeah,
Yeah.
physics. Specifically in 11th grade physics in the International Baccalaureate program, I felt like I was drowning. So I remember that, and I still have nightmares about that today.
Yeah.
Uh, Languages, though, were always my favorite. I really enjoyed them. I was able to absorb languages very quickly. I used to be a simultaneous translator, Spanish, English, and then picked up Russian and learned Russian fluently as well. And I used to be okay in Turkish and German and a few others.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, and I mean, you can see why you're a popular, why you've chosen this career in sales, right? Like you love communicating, and to learn a language is unlocking a whole nother, a whole nother culture you can now speak to. Really, that makes a lot of sense. I want to travel the world and meet people, and so languages are naturally a thing that you really enjoy. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, and I found something else out about it. Probably so. I did a program in Middlebury in Vermont. It was 9 weeks of intensive language education, where if you spoke a language other than the target language, you would be kicked out. And to just give you an example of how serious that was, I promise I'll come back to the point. It was a summer that The Dark Knight came out. It was in theaters, and so there were two people in the program who went and watched the movie. And as they were leaving the theater, the program director was driving by, saw them. There's obviously nothing being shown in that movie theater in any language other than English, and they were kicked out of the program. So that intense of a language education program. But one thing I realized during that summer was it changed how I think as well. And we talk a lot about a lot of where I spent the last 15 years in international expansion, helping businesses grow secondary, tertiary office presence, sales offices, engineering offices, and so on. And what struck me then was that a language is more than just words. It's how a culture expresses itself, establishes priorities, establishes like red lines almost of what they will and will not do based on how they phrase things. And that acknowledgement helped me tremendously. Going from, I'm from the US, so kind of, my value set is here. But then if I'm doing business in the Middle East or doing business in Asia or doing business in Asia, just understanding the language, even if I don't speak the language, I don't speak any Asian languages, but reading about the grammar, reading about, quirks and how the etymology and how language has developed over the last couple hundred years, it gives signs to what people care about, what people value. Is it a more family driven? Is it a more expansionary society? And like, it was a fascinating kind of unlock, I felt.
Yeah, no, that's really cool. The one of my favorite books is The Three Laws of Performance. And he has a section in there where he was doing a training in Japan. And one of the kind of the third law is if you speak into the future, you'll improve performance. So using future language is a gateway to unlocking performance. That's why great leaders, they speak the vision and they talk about the future, and then you basically accomplish what your intention is. And he started to notice how just the translator kept translating things and well, we might someday get to a place where we're hitting $10 million in revenue. And he's like, why are all these words? And so he had to ask, who in your culture uses future language, uses definitive future casting language? Well, only shoguns talk like that. Okay, well, from now on, I want you to speak like a shogun when you say these future statements. And so then, man, they just that unlocked and they oh no, I will do XYZ. Okay, cool. Now you get the exercise. But
Yeah.
that in that exercise, the culture of submissiveness was kind of showing up in in the training. So I think language is super important. Even internally inside of our organization, you're not allowed to use the word capability. You have to replace it with the word capacity, because it's a leadership cop out to think of somebody as not capable, or even to think of myself as not capable, when I think what's more true is that I just don't have the capacity for that yet. So I need to learn a new skill. I need to figure out what is my barrier to capacity, to have the capacity for that new skill or that different way of performing. I should not accept that I don't have the capability to perform in that different or better way.
That's really interesting. I've heard the inverse as well of that. One of the things we did in Salesforce a lot was, my organization was responsible for building out our capability maps across 33 different industry sectors, and thinking about what exists, that. Forget what we do, what we don't do. Anything, what we do, tangential and tangential again. What exists in that world? And building out these groups of capabilities and nested matrices of down to the job to be done for every capability group. So marketing. Well, what's every single job to be done that makes up marketing? Right? I'm building out those capability trees effectively. And then, I think for us, it was very much the follow-on decision was what, like, I mean, capacity was it. I really like your phrasing, and I was like, I'm like spinning it around now, thinking about this. It's a different spin on it. Because I always think of, I would think of capacity as a follow-on question somewhat, but the reality is it's not. It's where have we resourced today? It's a
Yeah.
very interesting framework.
Yeah. Cool. Well, what quote from a famous person lives in your mind rent free?
Uh, do or do not. There is no try.
Yeah,
Um,
Yoda, a little Yoda going on. I
well,
love
yeah,
that.
all the time. Um, there is no half-assing in life. There's no point. It's a waste of time. Don't bother. If you're gonna half-ass it, don't do it. If you're gonna do it, don't half-ass it. And so everything that I, for either myself or for my team, we try and do in full,
Mhm.
or we don't commit to it. And
Right.
I have found that to have immense benefits and immense challenges and costs associated with it. So I'm not saying it's the best way to do it, but it is, as a perfectionist cursed. Perfectionist curse to some extent, right?
Yeah, you may appreciate this. Then I have this in my mind along those lines is this formula: intention plus mechanism equals results. And the question is always, what's the ratio of mechanism to intention that you need to get to the result? And it's a bit of a trick question. And it's usually accompanied by a like a use case of like if you were in Paris, France, and you had no wallet, no phone, no identification, and it was a life or death issue that you had to get home to your home in the US. I'm in the Dallas area. I need to get home in Dallas. How long would it take? And would does intention plus mechanism equal the result, right? And so, just like you're contemplating now, the like, what would you say? Like, how long do you think it would take you to get home? Life or death situation. You're stuck in Paris, France. You got to get home. How long do you think it takes you to get home? No wallet, no phone.
I think under 48 hours.
I agree with that. Yep.
Um, depends somewhat on the time of day, also, I think.
Sure.
Is the embassy open? Yeah, that's no. Is it no? Or even if they're not, you can go there, you have a place to sleep, but can they do anything about it at that point?
Right.
Is a question that'll cost you 12 hours.
Yep.
Or,
Yeah. So
yeah,
the answer ends in this idea that yeah, the mechanism really didn't matter. I made it home. The way I got there was to be discovered. And it kind of goes with your Yoda quote that like my intention, like setting an intention and being devout in that attention. Um, many people have launched new businesses, and the way that they launched the business was saying, I'm going to go live at the end of I'm going to go live on January 15th of 2026. That is my intention. Okay, now I'm going to work backwards from there. These are all the things that must be true in order for me to go live with my new business on January 15th of 2026. And
I love that.
yeah, so it's 100% intention. I need 100% intention. I need my do. There is no try. And how I get there the mechanism of how I get to the result will be discovered as I go. Like I don't need to know that right now.
It's not, I have recently read the Elon Musk biography, um, and it was interesting. He does the same thing to all of his companies regularly, it seems like, where it's okay, in 7 days we're going to be on that platform, and they have half a rocket lying in a garage. So it's figure it out. That's the timeline. That's what we're doing, and we'll back out kind of into it from there. And I like the approach. I think that there needs to be. Well, one thing I took away from the biography is that you can do that once or twice, the same group of people. Start hitting a certain point of doing that with regularity, and unless you are the big boss, you will not. You will lose people along the way. Well, one or the other, losing people along the way. The question is,
Yeah.
do you use them?
Yeah, software development practice definitely tells us that there are a group of folks that figure out the outcome that is desired, and there's a group of folks that say, okay, um, this is how long it'll take you to get there. And sometimes that's a cycle of like, okay, well, we need to get there shorter amount of time. What are the trade-offs? And you're kind of negotiating that outcome from both sides. It's not a in software, one side does not own time and scope, or it's a recipe for disaster. One side has to own scope, and one side has to own time in order for it to like be a sustainable relationship.
Yeah, I like that. That's a really good point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'll get into some meatier stuff here. It's been great getting to know you. What tech trend has significantly impacted you or your industry, and how did your company respond?
Tech trend. I'm trying to define something beyond AI. Because I think that like there's that's probably the
It
answer, but
definitely comes up in this question quite often.
yeah,
And we can talk about it. It's certainly making waves, but
yeah, I think that maybe one way to think about this is a derivative of AI. One thing that has happened is that people's expectations around delivery, deliverables, and timing have changed, and it's never going to go back to the way it was.
mm,
And so, as a result of that, when you have conversations with CFOs around SDRs, for example, what is the role of an SDR? What are acceptable metrics? What's an acceptable cost to lead? Those the answers that you would get today from a standard mid-market or enterprise SaaS business are incredibly like everything's less than what it was 3 years ago.
mhm,
Because as eventually someone will figure out the AI SDR combination. We're not there yet by any means. There's some companies that raised money recently, 11x, that they're building it and they're working on it, but it's not working it's not working perfectly enough to actually set it up and let it launch right now, I don't think. And so eventually that'll be solved. The cost of outbound will effectively be zero. The marginal cost of your next outbound will be zero. And so if you're a CFO and you're thinking about how do you structure your cost model for the business, vendor spend is dropping and the resourcing towards some of these teams is being looked at really, really tightly. And so one of the things I've spent a lot of time on the last year and a half was looking at what activity metrics matter anymore within SDR world, for example. And then within those activity metrics, what does good look like? Is a 3% connect rate okay anymore? No, probably not. Is a 5%? Maybe okay, sure. I mean, let's talk about that. I don't think that's like, I think a year from now, we're going to look at a 5% connect rate and say this has been a complete waste of money and time. And so I think this for FDRs or for CSMs or for anyone who is doing a repeatable task, the the cost per task, the cost per activity needs to drop, and it's getting a ton of scrutiny right now.
mhm.
So partially as a result of AI, partially as a result of interest rates, and also just crowding in the spaces.
Yeah, yeah, it's going to be. Uh, I I wonder how we will value the authentic relationship. Um,
Will be.
because as I grow my business, being a software consultancy, the speed to trust is the most important thing for me. How fast can I build trust? And so I don't. Yes, I can use an AI for follow ups. I can take the AI note taker transcripts and I can speed write follow ups. But there's something just very synthetic about that relationship building. Um, that bothers me. And what I see is like we're going to have to offer something valuable in that sales work stream. Um, because conversations just won't do it. Conversations are going to be, robotic and artificial. And so my concern is just how transactional the world becomes, right? That the quality of relationships is just like rapidly decreasing, even internally. I feel like I'm seeing that since the emergence of AI. Like
Sure.
folks are just being more transactional with the way they treat one another, and that could be a good thing, I guess, if I really thought about it. But it doesn't feel great.
It doesn't feel great. I don't blame just AI for that. I think,
Mm-hmm.
like, I mean, we can go back 4 years with this one, right? Like 4.5 years ago, how we interacted changed forever. And if I think about like when did I notice that change? It was March 2020. Um, Everything started becoming transactional, short, and yeah, maybe fear was a driver then. But once we realized we could function as a business, as a person, as a family, whatever, with that in that way, I don't think we ever went back at a large degree.
Hmm.
I think a lot about what you were talking about AI interaction and in like written word, and it seemed to be spoken word as well. I think that AI plus fully remote equals super non-personal and just kind of agent to agent communication eventually. AI plus in person to some degree is a massive time saver, and actually I think could unlock valuable work
Yeah.
because we're able to have this conversation. If we were having this conversation in an office, it would be different by definition. We're having the same conversation in writing. It's way less personal, and especially then, let's like I'll just set the AI up and have it do the thing. Like I've written AI agents, right, AI bots recently, and I'm trying to learn what's new in this space. And I have a bot right now looking for things online, and then leveraging Claude and OpenAI APIs to communicate and interact with the targets I've identified. And it works. Like I'm getting what I need out of this. It's not fun for me,
Right.
but I'm also not spending a moment of time on this. But I like spending time on things that matter.
Yeah. Totally agree. And I think we're all playing with that same dichotomy, right? I think about this old role playing game, Shadowrun. This is dating myself way back. An old role playing game that was in kind of a quasi cyberspace kind of a lore. And there was a class of people. There was, of course, the shaman who were super into the all natural, and because they were so into the mystic, they had special powers. And then there were the dudes that were getting cybernetic implants, and as they would become more cybernetic, they would lose their humanity. So they would get marks against them by becoming basically super decked out with and so I think that's just like in my mind as we're doing these AI things, I'm just thinking like, okay, the more I put AI in the process, the more it loses its humanity, the more synthetic it will be. Even if it's not directly detectable, it'll be subconsciously detectable.
Yeah, I believe that.
Um, well, what are some other technology typically what I ask is what are three technology innovations you're betting on to drive your business growth?
How can I not say AI? So all right, here's three. One, I think that databases are going to change. So I've been seeing some really cool systems of record lately. I'm not to geek out on this, but I'm gonna. Things like coffee and others that are rethinking the fundamental databases and systems of record that we integrate with, because it's not 1999 anymore. The world has changed. Utilization has changed. Tools have changed. Yes, AI also is there, but buyer groups have changed. Like, we're no longer display ads are not how we communicate, how we spend most of our marketing budget anymore. Or out of home ads. So what does the world look like 10 years from now, given what we know today, and how do we sell to that world? Requires whole different thought around how do we store data and process data. So I think that's one thing. Like the folks, and now, okay, now they use the AI one on that one. Yeah, the folks at Sierra are doing a lot of things around this. Dahugan from a customer service perspective, Coffee, Campbell John, and they're doing really cool things to think about, like rethinking this entire to be system of record. I think it's really cool. I think that will significantly change all businesses that are in SaaS or B2B sales, period, going into the next 10 years, 5 years, probably. That's one. Two, trying not to say AI here. So you give me a minute. Um, I think that, okay, here's an interesting one. And I don't think this is a technical change. I think it's a utilization change. The world is becoming more data fluid. And so decisions are, it used to be that, large companies, your Fords, your Shells of the world would have dedicated teams whose entire purposes are processing an immense amount of data from all over the world, going back historically. I mean, Shell has every oil price that they've ever sold anything at since 1962, I think. It's the amount of data that you collect. It's incredible. And they had teams that would process and try and drive trends. Um, and so, but we're seeing that now, smaller and smaller companies, because it's becoming more accessible to store, process, analyze, and draw insights from data. And so I am excited about, but I haven't seen new systems and tools for visualizing data and drawing insights from data, asking questions of data. Now, I have seen this in specific niche areas. For example, for software sales teams or sales teams in general, from plan to pay. I've seen there's a company that I really like, Fullcast, that's building out systems that are fully horizontally integrated, from budgeting, planning, segmentation, territory assignment, quota assignment, comp plan design, and so on. But you just interact with and tell, hey, I want to see what quota coverage looks like if we made this thing, and it'll tell you whatever. It'll show it to you. Now, that's using an LLM on top of it, which I guess that is the next one, is that how we communicate with the systems and tools are changing. I'm a very big fan of using AI as an integrate, as a mediation layer between us and the systems, and not having AI be the system at this point. And so I play around a lot trying to find out what systems exist that can do that. Relay app is one I've been spending a lot of time with. I'll call it the later spade, and to basically answer the question of, I have all of these systems that I interact with. I don't want to spend time on 20 different windows. I want one window that can run all of these systems simultaneously.
Right.
I think that's the next thing's going to change.
Yeah, the RevOps. Yeah, for sure. What comes up for me there is that as you talked about data, like Shell knowing all the oil pricing since the beginning of time. I agree with that. I think though that the way we think of data is still very siloed. And the research space had a guest on the pod, and she is working on invasive species by basically controlling invasive species by natural means. So like bacteria that takes care of invasive weeds, or and so trying to find out pest control that's natural but takes care of the invasive species. So it's more ecological. It's not going to hurt anything. It's natural. So we don't use chemicals to control the invasive species. We use things that are naturally harmful to, like the grasshopper or the locust or whatever. And in that world, they share data sets in a really interesting way, where you have one researcher who's collecting data on specific pathogens or specific bacteria or specific microbes, and then they're sharing these data sets for the for the AI model. So to go back to your commerce example of Shell, I really think that someday Shell's going to say, okay, well, we have the pricing for oil. Okay, well, what is a corresponding metric that we don't have? How do we share that with so and so? Like, how do we know, um, the water temperature in the Pacific? And if that was controlled by another private company, that becomes very difficult. How we create commerce around that. So I'm hoping for something that maps that data sharing, and any company who has the opportunity to start to store a data asset, even if they think it's just some kind of trash data, should be figuring out how to store it, organize it, and make it more available. Because I still think data in an AI world, data is the gold.
Actually, yeah. It reminds me of the inverse situation I was in 15 years ago with one company, and the CTO at the time mentioned, I was proposing, it was in advertising, and I was proposing that we collect significant amounts of data around how users interact with our ads. How much time is spent looking at a given ad, the click rates on the, and then the demographics of the people taking these actions. At the time, the response was, why wouldn't it? It just sounds like a lot of stuff to store. Now, fast forward, 10 years, Facebook's doing it, Amazon's doing it, Apple, everyone's doing that. Because then it became apparent from someone who had a lot more resources how can we use this to make more money? But my gut response is always, if you can save, store, and catalog data in any structured or unstructured way, do it and figure out the use of it later.
Yeah, 100%. Well, what do you think are some most significant gaps between like your digital ambitions or the ambitions you've seen and the realities of today? Like, where do you think some of those gaps are?
So tell me more about the word digital ambition. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, digital ambitions probably. I really like we've talked about these three technology innovations, and inevitably then what happens is like, okay, so those technology innovations, they're going to progress, but then what are the gaps to like getting there, right? Like if we're betting on these tech innovations, so I just mentioned one, which is like if everybody keeps treating their data in a silo and hoards it and nobody knows that it exists, then that'd be a gap. So some way of saying, hey, I got this data, I don't know what to do with it, but it might be useful to you. Here are the references to that data. Like here's how you could map to it. So if you have something that looks like that and we can map to it, we can like, hey, I'm down to clown. That's a gap to me, is that we just don't see things in that way. And the ambition being that I can make money off of the data that I store, and I'm not kind of hoarding it for some you know possible reason.
So I'll give you two, and then let me know if you figure out where we're
Sure.
going to go with this. One is, I think, how we sell is broken today. I think we as a population, as a set of industries and B2B software and SaaS, we talk too much about the product and not enough about the pain.
Mm.
And there is there's a skill set gap here that I think that they can be trained towards, and I've done that successfully. But there's also a data gap that's part of this, which is, I don't think that companies do a good enough job generally at mapping the specific buyer pain that actually exists to which people are purchasing their product.
Mm.
We talk a lot about customer interviews and what do we perceive as their pain, and how do we position our product to talk to that pain, but we're actually not talking about the pain. We're talking about what we want the pain to be. And so this has to change if companies survive. And so we see this working in those companies that actually are mature and growing fast. We do not see this in today's crop of Series B companies for the most part.
Mm.
Series B companies that I'm looking at that are growing 80% year on year are doing so because their product is phenomenal and it really does solve a pain point, but the company couldn't pronounce that.
Yeah.
Uh, and I'm seeing a lot of that. And it's concerning to me because I think we're going to end up building the wrong things and we're going to miss an opportunity to do something great.
Yeah. I
Uh,
have just to parlay that quickly. I was talking about this very thing last night. I have two really good buddies. One of them helps he's a specific type of coach, both to internal employees and to executives, for how to manage stress while increasing capacity.
okay.
So his problem marketing, I call it problem statement marketing. You probably have a better term for it, but it's like, hey, are you stressed out, but still need to perform at your highest level? What if I could help you with that? And he is killing it by just well articulating that problem statement. Are you someone who experiences stress? Do you even know what stress is? Um, and he's tested things like, hey, do you have a big gut? That might be stress. I can help you with that. And then work it into that. He's tested stuff like that. I also have another buddy who is phenomenal at helping people negotiate their next place of employment, like negotiating just employment terms contracts when you're being hired. And so, hey, do you need, and these are like core problems. Yes, I need to get the best deal for my next full-time gig. Yes, I need to manage stress. Um, but they're and those guys are crushing it if they can educate the person on the problem, like if they can identify with the person that has the problem. So I totally agree with you. It's the pain point, the problem based marketing. You just don't see that done very well, and it's unfortunate because like we have a lot of problems, and if somebody could empathize with the problem, we would be prospective buyers. These are problems we don't know we have until we see somebody say, hey, here's the symptoms of stress. Do you need somebody to help you with stress? Oh yeah, that's what that is. Oh, okay. um
Yeah, really good point of that, actually. People feel the pain, but they don't know what it is. And then no one knows how to sell to them in that way because they wouldn't be able to identify it if you threw it at them.
yeah, I think the other way of saying that is, what if I don't know what to search? Like there is no search term for that particular problem. And there are softwares and solutions that are for kind of these unnamed pain points.
Yeah. It's a really good example of it. One that you're going to cause me to do some Googling after this call as well on that one. Thank you.
Cool.
That was one. The other one was more technical. I think that everyone pretends AI is something that isn't. It's not. AI isn't AI. It's not an artificial intelligence. What it is a vector. It's a set of directions we give to a system that runs in the direction we gave, and that's it. And so I think our ambition is that I can have a conversation with the chat GPT and it'll understand what I'm trying to do, and or not chat GPT, call it or not call it, whatever. It doesn't matter which
Yeah.
from up.
Yeah.
But the
It's a
reality
magic
is
trick. It's a digital magic trick.
exactly the digital magic trick, and it's for the most part, not all the time, for the most part, it is purely just responding what it thinks that you the reader want to read. And I myself get caught up sometimes thinking it's something it's not. And so that's another one I think where our ambition is far beyond the technical capacities at the moment.
Yeah. So good. So good. Well, let me ask you, what is a lesson that you've learned from failure? Just something that like, man, this is something that I learned the hard way. I'd love to just kind of share this story. Don't have to be specific, of course, but just something that could save somebody some pain.
You have to go slow to go fast sometimes. And there was a scenario where a situation where I was unsuccessful in a business because I was trying too hard to move too fast with too many headwinds. And what was the impact of that? It was one, I mean, overall not successful. So that was kind of the main one. Two, you don't bring anyone along with you when you do that. And that's kind of the funny part is like, if you bring people along with you, they push you. and it makes it easier to make progress. But if you try and we know what the answer is. If I say, hey, there's two sales teams, no one's successful. Third sales team being wildly successful, so we know the product, you can sell it. They're making their quotas. These two aren't. One of these leaders, you got to sit. One of them doesn't. What do you do? Well, we all know the answer to that, for the most part. The set of answers to it. But maybe we don't all know that, because maybe of that 24 people in that equation, only 5 of them have ever worked anywhere else, or 3 of them have ever actually been in a performance culture and know what that looks like. And so building that slowly has a lot of value. And so that's it's something that it took me pain to learn that. And did I learn it? I don't know. I talk about it like I do. We'll see. Probably make the same mistakes again. I'll try not to.
Yeah, I think there's a certain personality that if you're in the DISC assessments, that D personality that I love partnering with, in fact, um, just tends to kind of like charge ahead. And yeah, there can be some peril there. But yeah, if you listen to your team, I think that if you're willing to listen to your team and you have good people around you, it curbs that, then it kind of all fits together.
Yeah, it does. But it's harder to learn that, because it's the opposite of, I think, what we're all taught going into startup business or even larger businesses, which is that, the first mover advantage, or you have, if you look at investment banking and turnarounds and finance, there is a deadline. Money is running out. If you do not deliver by this deadline, you fail no matter what. Well, that's also not fully true.
Right.
And so it's, we're told, given these dogmas that are all wrong and are meant to drive us in a direction that is the right direction, but taking them literally makes us fail.
Yeah, no, it's really cool. There's this book called Loving What Is, and it's kind of a meditative process of like when you kind of capture a thought. um you capture a thought, maybe you just like you're doing some socializing and you're feeling very dissatisfied, and so you kind of meditate on like, why am I so dissatisfied with this socialization, like going out with these friends, and you think about it, and then the thought will pass through of like, I just don't think people really like me, or something like, oh, like I have this belief inside of me. And the process that Byron Katie, the author of this book, Loving What Is, she goes through is like, is that really true? Can you know 100% that it's true? And then what would your life be like without the thought? So like, and then kind of a turnaround, or trying different thoughts out like that. Like, well, people do really like me. Is that something you want to hang yourself on? I don't really feel any better than people don't like me. Okay, people do like me. I feel like I'm just arguing with myself. But what lands for me is that I really like other people. And so that's the thought that I want to hang on. Not that people don't like me, but that I like other people. And that's really all that matters. Um, and so yeah, I love that, like, reframing technique to grab a thought that's not really helping, like, hey, I should be to $1 million in revenue by now. Okay, well, yeah, is that really true? Like, how do you know for sure that you should be at $1 million by now? You started this company 6 months ago.
Yeah.
And you can just go through a process of like really figuring out, like, if I can take a picture of it, then it's real. Otherwise, I'm just making shit up, And so the idea of just like making up these arbitrary objectives, or like we tend to kind of should on ourselves, like, and I just think it's very unkind.
It's incredibly unkind, and it's wrong. You brought so what you just said reminded me of 2 things. You asked really early in this call, in this conversation, what's a quote that lives rent free in my head? And another one that pops up really frequently, not a quote, but it's a series of quotes. So I think it was Plato's 6th meditation, where he talks about breaking down everything, anything that we think we know and think is real, to what actually can you prove? Like, is there a monitor in front of me right now? I actually don't know in reality if that's there. If that's what my eyes are receiving, and the translation of my eyes from my brain is that there's a monitor. Maybe there isn't. To give an example. And there's that. And then I'm doing a lot of driving lately, and I listen to podcasts when I drive. I was listening to a Lex Friedman podcast a couple of days ago, driving back from Palo Alto, and um, it went in the same direction of what do we actually know? There isn't much that we know to be certain of. And so this is about to go in two directions. One increases anxiety, one decreases anxiety. And it's to choose your adventure story here. But for me, I don't know why I'm failing. I don't know if this is failure. Maybe this is just a step on the way. And maybe I just need to take the step back. My business hasn't hit $1 million. It's been 6 months. Okay, but let's just take a step back and really look at what are we doing and how are we doing? What are we actually doing and how are we actually delivering? And focus on improving what we know to be actual instead of what we think to be comparative.
Right.
And some people that would drive up their blood pressure. For me, it helps.
Yeah. I think it's just like is it really true that I should be at $1 million? Well, no. Okay. And I like what you're saying is, okay, we'll go back to what you do know. I'm receiving 3 leads a week. If I want to close more deals, I got to get more than 3 leads a week. Like,
Yep.
you can go back to things that are factual, the first principles approach, and yeah, comparison is the thief of joy kind of thing. Well, my buddy built his company to $1 million in 6 months. Like, why can't I? Like, these are just very unkind things. And I think as entrepreneurs, we feel like that shoulding on ourselves makes us go faster or is somehow driving us forward. And I think it's just noise.
Yeah.
It's just noise. It's kind of mental clutter, and it is impacting our capacity.
And I think there's a lot of that. When I talk to younger professionals today, the idea of multitasking being correct comes on a lot. And all it does is just mental clutter that reduces capacity as well. And it's all of these things that we think we know to be true, and all the things, and it's like really a commonality across all of them is just mental clutter. So what if we could get rid of mental clutter for a team? What would they actually achieve?
Yeah, I love it. Cool. Well, if people like what you've had to share today, how should they connect with you?
LinkedIn, I accept almost every invitation, and please reach out. I love learning people's stories and sharing my own.
Cool, man. It's been great chatting with you, and we will make sure that gets in the show notes. And man, it's been an awesome conversation.
This was mine.
Yeah, thank you for being here.
Thank you very much, Ben.